The neonatal wing of Westbridge Memorial Hospital was usually a place of quiet routine. Soft beeps from monitors, hushed voices of nurses, and the rhythmic sound of new life breathing in tiny cribs created an odd kind of serenity. But that morning, the calm was shattered. Room 207 had become a source of constant distress. Inside, the newborn son of billionaire tech mogul Christopher Langston had been crying, nonstop, for over 36 hours. No one could figure out why. Doctors had run tests. Nurses had changed formula, bottles, blankets. Pediatric neurologists and nutritionists had been called in. But the child, named Asher Langston, kept wailing. He refused to nurse, arched his back when touched, and screamed until his face turned deep red. Christopher stood by the glass window of the NICU with clenched fists. His usual cool demeanor had cracked. In boardrooms, his voice could command silence. On Wall Street, a whisper from him could move markets. But here, standing helpless in front of his own son's torment, he was nothing more than a terrified father. "I've spent millions building machines that can outthink men," he muttered to his assistant. "And I can't even help my son stop crying." Next to him, doctors whispered in frustration. "Colic. We already tried gas relief. Maybe a neurological issue. His scans are clean. No sign of anything abnormal." Nurses looked tired. Some had taken double shifts just to stay with the child. No one wanted to admit they were at their limit. Across the hallway, an elderly janitor quietly pushed her cart. Her name tag read, Miss Delores. She was in her late 60s, a black woman with graying curls tucked into a scarf. Her back was slightly hunched from years of work, but her eyes were sharp. She had worked in the hospital longer than most of the nurses and doctors combined. Miss Delores wasn't just a janitor. Everyone knew her as a kind of watcher, someone who saw things others missed. She never interrupted, but she noticed everything. As she mopped near room 207, she paused. The sound of the baby's cry, it wasn't just distressed. It was sorrowful. There was a rhythm to it. A pleading, almost desperate quality that pierced deeper than just physical pain. She stepped closer. Inside, Christopher was speaking with the head nurse. "Just call another pediatrician. Fly in someone from Switzerland if you have to. My son needs help, now." Miss Delores tapped lightly on the glass. No one noticed at first. Then a nurse turned. "She wants to come in," the nurse said, looking unsure. "Should I?" Christopher scoffed. "What? The janitor. This is a NICU, not a daycare." Miss Delores didn't move. She just waited. The crying grew louder. Asher's small body writhed in the incubator, his hands clenched into fists, his tiny mouth open in a silent scream before the wail erupted again. Monitors beeped urgently. Finally, the head nurse made a decision. "Let her in." Christopher turned, incredulous. "You can't be serious. We've tried everything," she said, gently but firmly. "What's 5 minutes?" Miss Delores entered the room slowly. She moved like she had all the time in the world, her eyes soft, not frightened or impatient. She didn't rush to the baby. Instead, she walked around the room, almost like she was feeling something in the air. Then she went to the crib. The baby's cries faltered for a moment, just a second, but everyone noticed. She leaned over the child, gently placing a hand above his head without touching. Her lips moved silently, perhaps in a prayer or a hum. Her fingers danced above him, as though sensing vibrations. The baby looked up at her. Miss Delores smiled, not a big smile, just a knowing one. Then she whispered something. No one heard it, not the nurse, not Christopher. But the moment the words left her lips, the baby went silent. Utter, complete silence. His tiny chest rose and fell in peace. His fists unclenched. His face relaxed. The screaming had stopped. The room stood still. Christopher stared in disbelief. What did you say to him?" he asked, stepping forward, voice shaking. Miss Delores turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "I told him the truth," she said. "The truth you've been hiding from everyone, including yourself." Christopher's face turned pale. "What do you mean?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Your baby isn't sick. He's scared. He's been hearing something none of us can, but something you know all too well." And with that, she walked out. To be continued in part 2. Would you like me to continue with part 2 now? The silence after the baby stopped crying was louder than any scream. Doctors stood frozen. Nurses exchanged wary glances. Christopher Langston remained by the crib, staring at his son, then at the retreating figure of Miss Delores as she pushed her mop cart down the hallway like nothing extraordinary had happened. But something extraordinary had happened. His son, who had wailed for nearly 2 days straight, was now asleep, peacefully, like any other newborn. Christopher finally spoke, his voice low. What did she mean? The head nurse shrugged. I have no idea. Maybe she sensed something. People like her, they see things differently. Christopher didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Asher, who now breathed steadily, one tiny hand curled near his mouth. Later that evening, the hospital staff began whispering. Did you hear? The baby finally stopped crying. It was Delores, the janitor. She just walked in and, it's like she knew. Some kind of spiritual thing. Maybe. I heard she was a midwife back in Louisiana before she moved here. The story spread quickly, but Christopher wasn't interested in rumors. He needed answers. And something about Dolores's words haunted him. Your baby isn't sick. He's scared. He's been hearing something none of us can, but something you know all too well. That night, unable to sleep, he requested access to Dolores's file. His wealth gave him influence, and by midnight he had it. Delores May Booker, age 68, born in Mississippi, former midwife, moved north in the 1980s. No children, no spouse, no listed medical degrees, but several letters of recommendation from families she'd helped. Nothing that explained how she knew what to say to his son. Christopher returned to the NICU, where Asher still slept, monitored but calm. He stared at the child. Scared, she had said. But of what? His mind drifted, unwillingly, to the past. To a secret he'd buried for years. A secret no one in his company, or even his own wife, knew. 12 years ago, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Christopher had traveled for business, negotiating land for a data center. The project had been controversial. Protesters claimed the land was sacred, part of an old village destroyed decades ago. He didn't care. He wanted cheap land and fast contracts. The deal was signed within a week. Locals protested, but were ignored. But on the last night, an old woman came to him outside his hotel. Wrinkled skin, cataract-clouded eyes, and a voice that felt like it came from the earth itself. You build your empire on bones, she whispered. The cries of the past are not silent. One day, a child of yours will hear them, and he will suffer until you remember. He laughed at her then. Paid her off. Security escorted her away. And yet, he'd never forgotten those words. Now, holding his newborn son's hand, something inside him shifted. What if Delores hadn't just sensed something? What if Asher really was hearing something invisible, something inherited? The child of a man who silenced the dead was now crying for them. The next morning, Christopher found Delores in the hospital garden, watering herbs. He didn't approach with arrogance this time. I need to know, he said. What's happening to my son? She didn't turn around. You already know. He hesitated. The woman in Haiti. 12 years ago. She said. I know what she said. Delores finally faced him, eyes unreadable but ancient. I've seen this before, she said. Babies who cry not for milk or warmth, but because they're born into a silence full of ghosts. They inherit what their fathers won't confess. He swallowed hard. Can I fix it? She studied him for a long time before answering. No, but you can face it. The child's not cursed. He's a mirror. You want him to be well. Then look at what he's showing you. Christopher sat on the bench beside her. I thought money could fix everything. Money can buy distraction, she said. But not peace. What do I do? She stood and handed him a slip of paper. Go to this address. It's a woman named Lorette. She's a healer. Not the kind you can Google. She'll know what needs to be done. And my son, he's safe, for now. But if you don't act, the crying will return. Louder. Not just his. Christopher looked down at the paper. A name, a place, and a note. Bring what was taken. He didn't know what it meant. But he knew where it started. That night, he packed a bag. By morning, he was on a private jet, heading back to Haiti. Haiti was hotter than he remembered. As Christopher Langston stepped off his private jet, the familiar scent of dust, salt, and firewood clung to the air like a memory refusing to die. He hadn't been here in 12 years. Not since he signed the deal that leveled an entire village to make way for a tech campus that never fully launched. Construction had been halted repeatedly, first by protests, then supply issues, then the mysterious deaths of 3 lead contractors. Eventually, the project was abandoned. But the land remained cleared. Scarred. The driver he'd hired held up a sign. Langston, Lorette. The man said little, just nodded and drove. For 2 hours they wound through narrow roads, past banana groves, rusted shacks, and silent people who watched the car with eyes like knives. At last they reached a small house built into the hillside. It was covered in vines, surrounded by chickens, and had no sign. The driver parked and left without a word. Christopher hesitated at the door, holding the paper Delores had given him. Bring what was taken. He wasn't sure what that meant. He'd come with nothing but his wallet, passport, and a heavy conscience. The door creaked open before he could knock. A woman stood there, maybe in her 40s, maybe 80. Her face was lined, her hands steady. Her eyes, like deep wells filled with stars. You came, she said. I was told to. I know. She stepped aside. Come in. Inside, it was cool, dark, and filled with herbs hanging from the ceiling. Candles flickered beside clay statues and woven charms. The scent of sage and smoke curled around them. Christopher sat. My son, he began. He cried for 36 hours. Nothing helped. Then a woman, Delores, came, and he stopped. She said he wasn't crying for himself. That he was scared. That he was hearing something only I could understand. Lorette nodded. He's not haunted, she said. He's gifted. Sensitive to the echoes his blood carries. Your blood. He leaned forward. She said I took something. What does that mean? Lorette looked at him carefully. Do you remember what was here before your machines? He swallowed. A village. A village and a graveyard, she corrected. A place. Where the dead were honored. Where mothers wept for lost children, and priests sang for ancestors. You bulldozed it. You paved over spirits who still cried. I didn't know, he said, though the words sounded weak even to his own ears. You were warned, she replied. By a woman who came to you. The one with the cloudy eyes. Christopher felt a lump in his throat. She said my child would suffer. She didn't curse you. She warned you. When people break sacred ground, the earth remembers. And when that brokenness passes down to the innocent, the pain has to go somewhere. He was quiet for a long moment. I want to make it right, he said. Tell me what to do. Lorette studied him. You can't undo the past, she said. But you can acknowledge it. She stood and handed him a bundle wrapped in red cloth. Inside is earth from the land you desecrated. Bone dust from the old graves. Hair from a mourning mother. And tears, not yours, but someone's. Take this. Bury it beneath your son's nursery. Say the names of the people who were lost. Light a candle every year. And speak to your child of truth. That's all. That's everything, she said. Your son doesn't need to forget. He needs to grow with the memory honored, not denied. 3 days later, Christopher returned home. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't update his board. He simply held his son and whispered apologies only the baby could truly understand. That night, he opened the red cloth and followed every instruction. He buried the bundle under Asher's crib. He lit a candle. He spoke the names Lorette had given him, names of the forgotten villagers, names once erased. He cried. And Asher slept. 1 year later, the nursery was quiet, peaceful. Asher cooed softly in his crib, gazing up at stars painted on the ceiling. Miss Delores visited once a month now. Not as a janitor, but as a friend. You did good, she said, watching the boy smile. You listened. Christopher nodded. He's still sensitive. Sometimes he looks at things I can't see. But he's not afraid anymore. That's because you're not afraid anymore, she said gently. He looked at her. Do you believe in redemption? He asked. I believe in remembering, she said. Redemption comes after that. She touched Asher's tiny hand. The baby gurgled and curled his fingers around hers. Then she stood to leave. Outside, the wind blew gently, like a sigh of relief from the past.